When my husband broke down at my sister's funeral, I knew, without proof, without logic, that something had been wrong long before that day. He didn't just cry, he folded. His shoulders shook the way they did when his father died. His breath came in short, panicked pulls, like he was drowning in open air. And for one suspended, unbearable moment, I forgot I was standing beside a coffin holding my younger sister. All I could see was my husband, his grief loud, uncontrollable, intimate. Too intimate. The church smelled like old wood and lilies that were already beginning to turn sour. Someone had left the side door cracked open, and a thin ribbon of cold air kept brushing the back of my calves. I remember that detail because I was trying to ground myself in anything that wasn't the way my husband clutched the edge of the pew like it was the only thing keeping him upright. People cry at funerals. I knew that. I wasn't heartless. But this was different. I watched him from the corner of my eye while the pastor spoke about forgiveness and eternal rest. My husband bowed his head so low, his chin nearly touched his chest. His hands trembled. When he whispered, "I'm sorry," it wasn't loud enough for anyone else to hear, but I did. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. At the time, I told myself it was just grief layered on grief. My sister, Anna, had been sick for months before she died. Cancer doesn't just take the person it claims, it slowly rearranges everyone who loves them. We had all been bracing for the end, even as we pretended we weren't. Still, as I stood there in my black dress that pinched at the waist, holding a folded tissue I hadn't yet used, I had the strangest sensation that I was standing just outside a room where something terrible had already happened, and everyone else knew but me. Anna had been my younger sister by 3 years. The loud one, the one who laughed with her whole body and cried just as freely. She'd never been married, never had children, and she used to joke that she preferred her freedom too much to share it with anyone long term. Growing up, we shared a bedroom until I left for college. Twin beds pushed against opposite walls, mismatched lamps, posters taped up with old chewing gum. She used to steal my sweaters without asking. I used to steal her confidence. When I married my husband, Mark, Anna had been polite to him, cordial, distant even. They weren't enemies, but they were never close either. If anything, they seemed to exist in parallel lines, friendly when required, otherwise uninterested. That's what I had believed. Our life before everything unraveled was ordinary in the way most people would envy. Mark and I had been married for 17 years. We lived in a modest, sun-faded house with creaky floors and a kitchen window that never quite shut properly. We were comfortable, not wealthy, predictable, not boring. He worked in logistics for a manufacturing company. I managed a dental office 3 towns over. Our schedules overlapped just enough for dinner together most nights, pasta on Wednesdays, takeout Fridays, coffee together every Sunday morning sitting at the small table by the window while the world outside woke up. Mark had his habits. He always rinsed his coffee mug before putting it in the sink. He hummed tunelessly when he shaved. He kissed my forehead before bed, even when we'd argued. I had my own routines: grocery shopping on Mondays, laundry folded immediately, never left in baskets. I called Anna every Thursday evening on my drive home from work, usually complaining about patients who showed up late or staff who forgot to lock the supply cabinet. She'd listen. She always did. Sometimes Mark would be in the living room when I talked to her, flipping channels or pretending to read. He'd wave if I pointed the phone toward him. Anna would wave back, smiling, and then the conversation would return to us, sisters stitched together by shared history and small, familiar annoyances. Looking back, I wonder how much of that was real and how much was rehearsal. The first real crack came months before the funeral, though I didn't recognize it then. Anna had stopped answering my Thursday calls. When she did pick up, her voice sounded tired, distracted. She'd cut our conversations short, claiming headaches or appointments she'd forgotten. "She's probably just exhausted," said Mark one evening as I stared at my phone, watching the call go to voicemail again. I nodded. That explanation fit neatly into the story I already believed. Mark, on the other hand, started finding reasons to leave the room when I did manage to talk to her. He'd suddenly remember emails he needed to send or tools he'd left in the garage. At the time, I assumed he was just giving us privacy. I had no reason not to. When Anna's condition worsened, Mark offered, almost insisted on driving me to the hospital whenever I visited. He waited in the parking lot instead of coming inside, saying hospitals made him uncomfortable. I remember thinking it was considerate, even kind. At the funeral, as people stood to sing a hymn Anna loved, Mark didn't rise right away. He stayed seated, head in his hands. I reached for him instinctively, resting my palm on his back. He flinched. It was subtle. Anyone else might not have missed it, but I felt it, like touching a hot stove you didn't know was on. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were red-rimmed, unfocused. He squeezed my hand too tightly. "I should have done more," he said, voice hoarse. "For Anna?" I asked gently. He swallowed hard. "For all of you." The words sat between us, unfinished. That night, after the last casserole dish was scraped clean and the house fell quiet, I stood alone in our bathroom brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection. My face looked older somehow, drawn in places grief hadn't yet softened. Behind me, Mark sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees. "I keep hearing her laugh," he said. I paused mid-brush. "You never were that close." The sentence slipped out before I could soften it. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was careful, measured. "Loss makes things strange." I nodded. I rinsed my mouth. I turned off the light. But as I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing finally even out, I knew something had shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to make the ground beneath my certainty feel less solid than it had the day before. And once that happens, once doubt takes root, it doesn't need much to grow. In the weeks after the funeral, grief settled into our house like a fine layer of dust, quiet, persistent, coating everything no matter how often I tried to wipe it away. People stopped calling, the casseroles dwindled, life resumed its ordinary pace, but I moved through it with a dull pressure behind my eyes, like I was constantly on the verge of remembering something important and painful. Mark returned to work 3 days after the service. I took a full week off, telling my boss I needed time to be with family. The truth was, I needed time to sit with the silence Anna had left behind. Her apartment was still full of her things. I volunteered to help clean it out, partly because it felt like something I owed her, and partly because I wasn't ready to let go. The first time I unlocked her door without her inside, the smell hit me hardest. Lavender detergent, stale coffee, and something faintly medicinal. I worked slowly, deliberately, folding clothes she'd never wear again, sorting through mail she'd never open. Every object felt like a small betrayal. Mark offered to come with me. I told him I wanted to do it alone. He didn't argue. That should have relieved me. Instead, it lodged another quiet question in my chest. On my third visit, while boxing up papers from Anna's desk, I found a manila envelope tucked behind a stack of old magazines. It wasn't sealed. My name was written across the front in Anna's looping handwriting. I sat on the floor to open it, knees drawn to my chest. Inside were photographs. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The images were out of order, casual, like someone had snapped them without much thought. A man's arm across a table, a familiar watch resting against a coffee cup, the edge of a smile I knew well, even when the face was partially cropped out. My stomach tightened. I pulled the photos out one by one, hands shaking now, and spread them across the floor. There was Mark, sitting across from Anna in a cafe I recognized, 2 towns over, the one near his office. There was Mark again, standing beside her in what looked like a hotel lobby, his hand hovering just behind her back. Another photo showed them laughing, heads tilted toward each other, bodies angled in a way that had nothing to do with family obligation. Time seemed to slow, the room narrowing to the sound of my own breath. I told myself there had to be an explanation, that I was misreading things, that these were taken out of context. Then I reached the bottom of the envelope. There was a folded letter. My name again, this time shakily, like her hand hadn't been steady. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for a long time, like the paper itself might burn me if I touched it. When I finally did, Anna's voice poured out in ink. "I don't know how to say this without hurting you. I don't know if there is a way that doesn't break something between us forever. I never meant it to happen, I swear that. It started when I was sick and scared, and he was the one who showed up. One conversation turned into another. One day turned into months. He told me he loved you. I believed he meant it. But he also told me he loved me, and I believed that too. I wanted to tell you myself. I kept waiting for the right moment. Then the doctors stopped talking about time like it was something I had plenty of. If you're reading this, I didn't find the courage. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for everything. Please don't hate him. And please, somehow, forgive me. The words blurred as tears spilled down my face, dripping onto the paper, smearing the ink. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from making a sound. I don't remember how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. When I finally stood up,